They told me I was signing papers to donate my body to science after I died. That's what they said. But what they never told me was that the moment I put pen to paper, I was already trapped, alive, but no longer fully human. I'm not a madman. I was a healthy old man, walking the streets of my town with the same strength I had 30 years ago. My mind was sharp, my body still capable. But everything changed the day I got fooled into signing away my freedom. My name is Leonard Grey. And this nightmare started with the two people I once trusted most, my ex-wife, Marianne, and my daughter, Claire. The women I loved, who now had a secret partnership with a biotech corporation so twisted, it makes your skin crawl. They called it progress. Genetic manipulation. Helping elders live better. Lies. Lies that hid the darkest kind of betrayal. It all began on a quiet afternoon when Marianne showed up at my door. She looked tired, maybe a little too nervous, but she wore that familiar smile, the one that used to make me believe in forever. She handed me a stack of papers. "Just some routine stuff, Leonard," she said. "You're signing to donate your body after you pass. It's for science." I hesitated, but it felt harmless enough. I never imagined that she had already signed me up for something far worse, a secret program where elders like me were used as test subjects for genetic experiments no human should endure. Days later, they took me. The biotech firm that Marianne and Claire were secretly working with whisked me away to a cold, sterile lab. I became their living experiment. They poked and prodded, injected me with substances that burned through my veins, chemicals that twisted my DNA. I felt myself slipping away, losing who I was. Then the experiment failed. I was supposed to die. But something inside me fought back. When I woke, I was different. Sharper. Faster. My mind raced with clarity I never had before. But my body? It still ached from what they did to me. And that's when the real horror began. I wasn't just a patient. I was a weapon, a living, breathing nightmare that they never wanted to come back. I escaped the lab in the dead of night. Every step I took was fueled by rage and a hunger for justice. I had to find Marianne and Claire, expose their betrayal, and stop them before they could hurt anyone else. But the deeper I dig into their world, the more I realize they're only pawns in a much larger game, one with consequences that could change humanity forever. Now, I'm hunting them, using their own twisted technology to fight back. I am no longer just Leonard Grey. I am something else, something stronger. But I need you with me on this journey. If you want to see justice served, if you want to uncover the truth with me, then like this story, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Before I move forward, I want to know, where are you from? Because this story isn't just mine. It's everyone's. I can still feel the cold steel against my wrists. The memory of that sterile room, bright lights, glass walls, and faces I didn't recognize, haunts me. They called me Subject 47. Just a number. But I wasn't just a number. I was a man who'd been robbed of his life and forced into a cage of science gone wrong. When the injection started, I thought it was just routine testing. But the pain was something else. Burning, freezing, then a numbness that spread through my limbs. They monitored every reaction, every twitch, like I was some broken machine they could fix with chemicals. I lost track of time. Days? Weeks? The outside world became a distant memory, a fading photograph in my mind. Then came the failure. They told me I wouldn't live. The serum they pumped into me was unstable, my cells started attacking themselves. They left me for dead. But I didn't die. Instead, I woke in the dark, barely able to breathe. The guards were gone. The lab was eerily silent. I knew this was my chance. My body was weak, but my mind was sharper than ever. The serum, whatever it did, it rewired me. My senses were heightened. I could hear the faint hum of machines behind locked doors, feel the subtle vibrations through the floor. I moved carefully, silently. Every step was a gamble between life and death. I remember the cold hallways, the flickering lights, the way shadows seemed to reach for me. Somewhere deep inside, I wanted to scream, to rage against this nightmare. But I had a plan now. Escape. Breaking out wasn't just about getting free. It was about finding Marianne and Claire. They had to answer for this. They had to tell me why. I reached a door locked with a code. I scanned the keypad with my new, uncanny intuition, noticing smudges on certain numbers. I pressed them, heart pounding. The door hissed open. Inside was a lab filled with monitors. On one screen, I saw a live feed of my ex-wife speaking to a man I assumed was the biotech company's director. The look in her eyes chilled me. It was cold, calculating. Not the woman I once loved. "I'm worried about him," she said. "The experiment gave him more strength than we predicted. If he escapes, everything falls apart." I realized they never planned to stop the experiments, never intended to protect people like me. To them, I was a test, disposable. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I stole a security badge, slipped into a lab coat, and walked past guards as if I belonged there. Each breath was a reminder that freedom was within reach. Outside, the night was darker than I remembered. The city was asleep, unaware of what had been done behind closed doors. I knew I had to disappear. But first, I had to find out everything Marianne and Claire were hiding. I needed proof to bring them down. Yet, as I slipped into the shadows, I felt eyes on me. Somewhere, someone was watching. They knew I was gone. And they wouldn't stop until they found me. This wasn't just my battle anymore, it was a war. I'm Leonard Grey. They turned me into their experiment. But now, I'm turning the tables. The real question is, how far am I willing to go for revenge? The city never looked so cold. Even under streetlights, everything felt sharper, edges cutting through the night like broken glass. I had escaped the lab, but freedom tasted bitter, coated with a dangerous truth I wasn't ready to face. Marianne and Claire weren't just collaborators, they were architects of my nightmare. I needed answers, and I knew exactly where to start. Marianne's apartment was on the edge of town, a place I hadn't visited in years. Memories crowded my mind, the life we once shared, the laughter now buried beneath layers of lies. I waited until the street was empty, then slipped inside. The place was eerily pristine, like no one had lived there for a while. But I found a hidden drawer in her desk, filled with encrypted files and photos. One photo caught my eye, a group picture with Marianne, Claire, and several suited men. The biotech director was there too, grinning like a predator eyeing its prey. Next to the photo was a document, project files, research notes, detailed plans to manipulate elder DNA, all labeled Operation Prometheus. Prometheus, the myth of a titan who stole fire from the gods to give to humans. Funny. They thought they were gods playing with fire, but they didn't realize who was about to burn. Suddenly, the door creaked. Someone was coming. I hid in the shadows, heart hammering. It was Claire. She moved quickly, her eyes scanning the room like she was expecting me. "Leonard," she said, voice cold but controlled. "I thought you'd be dead by now." "Dead? You left me to die," I spat, stepping into the light. "How could you do this to your own father?" She didn't flinch. "You don't understand what's at stake. This isn't just about you. It's bigger than all of us." "Bigger?" I laughed bitterly. "You turned me into a lab rat. You used me." Claire's gaze softened for a fraction of a second, just enough to see a flicker of pain. "We thought it was the only way to save people like you," she whispered. "But it got out of control." I wanted to believe her. But betrayal cuts deeper than any injection ever could. Before I could say more, her phone buzzed, a message from Marianne, "He's inside. Get out." Claire looked torn, but she ran. The moment the door slammed shut behind her, I heard sirens in the distance. They were coming. I grabbed the files and disappeared into the night. I wasn't just running from them, I was hunting now. Every step would bring me closer to the truth, and closer to the people who destroyed my life. They made me a weapon. But I'm about to become their reckoning. The cold night air bit through my thin jacket as I slipped through the maze of alleys. Every footstep echoed like a warning, this city wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the unseen forces that had stolen my life, reshaped it, and left me broken in their wake. But I was far from broken. The files I carried felt heavy in my bag, not just because of their physical weight, but because of the secrets they held. Project Prometheus wasn't some underground rumor. It was real. Worse than real. It was a blueprint for a nightmare disguised as salvation. They promised to save the elderly, to extend life and erase disease. What they delivered was something else entirely, monsters trapped in frail human bodies, experiments that blurred the line between man and machine, science and sin. I found a quiet corner in an old diner, the smell of coffee thick in the air, the hum of muffled conversations surrounding me. I pulled the files out and began to sift through them. Names, dates, test results, some of it was gibberish, the scientific jargon swirling like a storm in my mind, but there were patterns, coded messages hiding in plain sight. One phrase kept repeating, neural enhancement vector, a serum designed to accelerate brain function, but with unpredictable side effects. I traced it back to the injection I was given, the one that should have killed me. They didn't just want to preserve life. They wanted to rewrite it. To control it. I couldn't stop the growing fury burning inside me. The betrayal wasn't just from Marianne and Claire, it was from everyone involved. Their biotech firm had shadowy investors, government ties, and an agenda far darker than I imagined. I needed allies. People who weren't blinded by greed or ambition. But who could I trust? Every face felt like a mask hiding an enemy. Then, a sudden noise jolted me. Footsteps, fast, deliberate, closing in. I ducked behind a pillar, heart pounding like a drum. Two men in dark suits entered the diner, scanning the room like hunters. Their eyes locked on the door seconds after I heard it slam behind me. I clenched my fists. They weren't here for a casual meal. They were here for me. I slipped out the back, navigating the labyrinth of streets I barely remembered. The city felt like a maze designed to trap me, but I knew its secrets, the hidden paths, the abandoned buildings, the underground tunnels. My mind was racing. How far had this conspiracy reached? How many lives were hanging in the balance? As dawn began to paint the sky, I found shelter in a rundown motel. Alone, I finally allowed myself a moment to breathe, to let the weight of what I was facing settle in. The serum was inside me, rewriting my body and mind. I was stronger, smarter, but also a ticking time bomb. Every day I survived was a gift and a curse. I pulled out my phone, an old burner I kept hidden, and sent a message to an old friend, someone who owed me more than a few favors. Need help. Prometheus. No time. I couldn't afford mistakes. Not anymore. As I closed my eyes, I felt a surge of determination. They thought they had made a monster. But they didn't realize the monster had a purpose. Revenge. Justice. And the fight was only beginning. The motel room smelled of mildew and regret, the cracked window letting in the distant hum of the city waking up, unaware of the war brewing beneath its skin. I sat on the edge of the bed, the files spread before me like a map leading straight into hell. Every page I turned revealed more than just scientific coldness, it revealed the human cost. Faces blurred by time, names erased, lives turned to data points in some sick experiment. I thought about Marianne and Claire. What drove them? Was it ambition? Desperation? Or did they truly believe in their cause, blinded by a god complex that made them forget the price of their actions. I pressed my fingers to my temples, the serum inside me still pulsing, a constant reminder of what they'd done. My mind was no longer just mine. The genetic manipulation had unlocked something primal and terrifying. Thoughts raced faster than my heart could follow, and memories from years ago flickered like broken film reels. There was one memory that wouldn't leave me, the night Marianne disappeared from my life without explanation. The bitter fights, the cold silences, Claire's distance growing day by day. Now, pieces started to fit. That night wasn't an ending, it was the beginning of their plan. A sharp knock pulled me from my thoughts. My hand instinctively went to the worn pistol hidden beneath the mattress. "Leonard?" The voice was soft, cautious. I froze. The door cracked open just enough to reveal a face I hadn't seen in over a decade, Daniel, my oldest friend and once a fellow soldier. His eyes scanned the room quickly before settling on me. "Thought you might need some backup," he said, stepping inside. Daniel was the last person I expected, but also the only one I trusted. Back then, we'd fought side by side in wars far away, trusted each other with our lives. But this was different. This was personal. I showed him the files, explaining what I'd uncovered. His face darkened with every page. This goes way beyond anything I imagined," he muttered. "Biotech, government, corporations, they're all tangled up in this Prometheus project." Daniel's contact network was vast, old military connections, hackers, insiders who despised the corruption bleeding through the system. Together, we planned our next move: infiltrate the biotech secondary facility rumored to house the core research and, more importantly, the missing elders who hadn't donated their bodies willingly. I felt a strange chill as we talked, like the walls themselves were listening. Marianne and Claire were always a step ahead. Whoever they were working for had eyes everywhere. That night, as I lay on the threadbare mattress, I heard whispers in my mind, effects of the serum or something darker. I couldn't tell anymore. Sometimes, fragments of other people's thoughts seeped into my consciousness. Echoes of pain, fear, and something, rage. I realized the experiments hadn't just altered my body, they'd fractured my very being. But it wasn't a weakness. It was a weapon. At dawn, we moved. The facility was a fortress, hidden beneath layers of security and secrecy. Daniel hacked into the external cameras while I used the stolen security badge to slip inside. Every corridor was a maze of glass and steel, clinical and cold. And then I saw them, faces I recognized from the files. Elderly men and women trapped behind reinforced glass, hooked to machines, their eyes vacant but alive. Living ghosts in a prison of science. I clenched my fists, anger boiling over. They were victims, like me. Suddenly, alarms blared. Daniel's voice crackled over my earpiece, "They know we're in. Get out." I grabbed as many data drives as I could carry and sprinted toward the exit. My heart thundered, every muscle screaming for release. At the last moment, a shadow blocked my path, Claire. She looked tired, but her eyes burned with a conflicted fire. "Leonard, please, listen." I barely heard her over the chaos. "Why? Why did you do this?" She hesitated. "Because I wanted to save you." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Save me? How could this twisted project be saving anyone? Save me from what? I demanded. From the disease, she whispered. From death. The irony was bitter. Before I could respond, footsteps closed in, forcing us apart. I escaped into the night, Claire's words echoing in my mind. I'm Leonard Grey. They turned me into their experiment. Now, I carry their ghosts, and their sins. And I won't rest until the world knows the truth. The night air was thick with silence, but inside me, a storm was raging, chaotic and relentless. Claire's words wouldn't leave my mind. I wanted to save you. How do you save someone by turning him into a science experiment? How do you call it salvation when you tear apart everything that made me human? I stumbled through the streets, the weight of the data drives in my bag reminding me that I wasn't just running from the past, I was carrying a future so dangerous it could burn everything to ashes. Prometheus wasn't just a project, it was a blueprint for a new kind of control. They weren't just playing with genetics, they were rewriting what it meant to be alive. But what scared me most wasn't the science, it was the people behind it. The ones who saw me as nothing more than a vessel for their ambitions. Marianne and Claire were just pieces on a chessboard, and the real players were hidden in shadows I hadn't even begun to fathom. I found refuge in an abandoned warehouse on the city's outskirts, a place where no one would think to look for a fugitive like me. The peeling paint and broken windows mirrored my own fractured soul. I needed time to think, to make sense of the chaos. I pulled out one of the drives and connected it to my laptop, a relic I'd kept for emergencies. Lines of code and encrypted files flickered on the screen. Hours passed as I sifted through layers of data, research logs, patient files, funding trails. It was worse than I thought. Prometheus wasn't just about elder care. It was about creating a new breed, genetically enhanced humans designed to be smarter, faster, stronger. And the serum they injected me with? It was the prototype. I could feel the serum's effects pulsing beneath my skin. My senses were heightened, my thoughts sharper, but there was a cost. At times, my mind flickered in and out of focus. Sometimes, I'd catch glimpses of other memories, fragments of other people's lives, their fears, their pain. The serum wasn't just altering my body, it was merging me with the echoes of others. I wasn't just a survivor. I was becoming something else. Suddenly, the silence shattered. A soft creak from the warehouse entrance. Someone was coming. I grabbed my pistol, the cold metal steady in my hand. The door groaned open, and a figure stepped inside, Daniel. "Leonard," he said, relief flooding his voice. "You okay?" I nodded, lowering the gun. "We need to move. I found something." He scanned the files on the laptop, his face hardening. "This isn't just biotech. This is bioweapon research. They're building soldiers, not patients." I clenched my fists. "And I'm their first prototype." Daniel looked at me, eyes searching. "You don't have to do this alone." But I did. This was my war. My fight for the truth. We planned our next move carefully. The files pointed to a secret facility deep in the mountains, where they developed the serum and held their most sensitive experiments. If I wanted answers, that's where I had to go. As we prepared to leave, a new thought struck me, a dark suspicion I couldn't shake. Marianne and Claire, they were close to the project, but were they just pawns? Or had they made a deal to protect themselves? Maybe even to save others? The lines between friend and foe blurred with every step I took. We traveled under the cover of darkness, navigating winding roads toward the hidden facility. The mountain air was thin and cold, biting through my jacket like a warning. The facility loomed ahead, a fortress carved into the rock, surrounded by razor wire and watchtowers. High-tech sensors blinked red, patrolling drones buzzed overhead. It was a fortress built to keep secrets and prisoners. Daniel and I moved silently, bypassing security cameras with hacked codes and careful timing. The air smelled of antiseptic and cold metal, the sterile corridors a stark contrast to the wild nature outside. Then I saw them again, elders like me, prisoners in this scientific hell. But something was different. Some of them moved with unnatural grace, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The serum had worked on them, but not like me. They were stronger, faster, more dangerous. One stepped forward, blocking my path. Her eyes, sharp, calculating, met mine. "Leonard Grey," she said, voice low and threatening. "You don't belong here." "I'm not here to fight," I said. "I'm here for answers." She smiled, a cold, bitter twist of lips. Answers will cost you more than you're ready to pay. As we moved deeper into the facility, I uncovered more horrors. Labs filled with twisted experiments, rooms where elders screamed silently in containment, their minds shattered by injections and surgeries. And then, in a locked chamber, I found it, a tank filled with a glowing liquid. Inside floated a figure I never expected to see. Marianne. Her eyes were closed, face pale but serene. Wires and tubes connected her to machines that hummed quietly. I staggered back. Why? I whispered. Why would you do this to yourself? A voice crackled over the intercom, a voice I hadn't heard in years but never forgot. Because, Marianne said weakly, some sacrifices are necessary. Suddenly, alarms blared. Daniel grabbed my arm. They know we're here. We have to move. We barely escaped as security forces poured in, gunfire echoing through the halls. The serum coursing through me made me faster, stronger, but the chaos was overwhelming. Outside, as we fled into the night, I looked back at the facility, its cold lights flickering in the distance. Marianne was trapped inside, but so was the truth. And I knew that finding her wouldn't end this nightmare. It was just the beginning. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, I felt the serum pulsing within me, no longer just a curse, but a weapon. I was Leonard Grey, survivor, experiment, and now, something more. And the fight to expose Prometheus, and those who hid behind it, was far from over. The sun was just a pale glow on the horizon as Daniel and I disappeared into the dense woods, our breaths visible in the chill morning air. The facility behind us was a cage of secrets, and Marianne was locked inside it. The weight of that truth settled on my chest like a stone. I had always thought of her as the woman who left me, who betrayed me. Now, I realized she was also a prisoner. Maybe more than I was. Daniel broke the silence. What now, Leonard? We have the files, but we can't just storm back in. I stared into the trees, my mind racing. We need allies. People who can fight back, people who aren't afraid to look the monster in the eye and call it out. But who? The serum inside me pulsed, a constant reminder that I was no longer just a man. My senses were sharper, my reflexes faster, but with every passing hour, the line between me and the experiment blurred. Sometimes I caught myself thinking in patterns I didn't understand, recalling data from the files that should have meant nothing to me. I was becoming Prometheus's unintended creation, a living weapon forged from pain and science. Our camp was a clearing, shadowed by towering pines. I sat against a fallen log, rubbing my temples. My head throbbed, not from pain but from overload. The memories of my past life, the happy ones with Marianne and Claire, felt like fragments of a distant dream. I questioned everything. What kind of monster had I become? What part of me was still Leonard Grey? Daniel watched me carefully. You're not alone in this, he said quietly. We'll find a way. But I wasn't sure he understood the war inside me, the constant battle between the man I was and the creature I was becoming. Night fell, and with it came a strange quiet. I stared up at the stars, wondering how many others had been lost in the same darkness. The files hinted at dozens, maybe hundreds, of elders trapped in facilities like the one Marianne was in. Some had survived experiments worse than mine. Some hadn't. I clenched my fists, the serum's pulse turning sharp, almost painful. I had to move forward. For them. For Marianne. For the part of me that still believed in justice. But the past isn't so easily left behind. The next day, Daniel led me to a contact, a woman named Elise. She was a former journalist who had spent years investigating biotech corruption. She knew Prometheus better than anyone. Her eyes were sharp, tired, but filled with a fierce determination. Leonard Grey, she said, shaking my hand firmly. You're more important than you know. We laid out the files. Elisa's face darkened with every page. "This is bigger than a biotech scandal," she said. "This is about control, about creating a new class of humans, a weaponized elite." She showed us hidden recordings she'd acquired, conversations between high-ranking officials and Prometheus executives, discussing neural dominance and population control. It was chilling. "We have to get this out," Elise said. "Expose the truth before they silence everyone." But exposing Prometheus meant going into the lion's den. That night, I sat alone, the weight of the serum pressing on me. My reflection in a cracked mirror was a stranger's face, older, sharper, but haunted. I traced the scar on my wrist where they had injected me. It was a mark I'd never been able to erase. And then came the whispers, those flickers of other minds, other memories invading my thoughts. Sometimes I could hear voices, not mine, but theirs. The victims. The lost. I realized then that the serum wasn't just changing me physically, it was connecting me to them. To the others trapped inside the projects. Their pain, their rage, it was part of me now. Was I still Leonard Grey? Or had I become something new, a vessel for all the broken souls the experiments had created? The line between victim and weapon was dissolving. Suddenly, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number: "We're watching you. Stop or suffer." The threat was clear. Prometheus was closing in. I looked out the window at the dark woods. The fight wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival, for me, for Marianne, for all of us trapped in the shadows of Prometheus. I swallowed hard. I was ready to become the reckoning. The night had a way of swallowing sound, but inside me, the noise was deafening. The serum wasn't just a cocktail of chemicals anymore, it was a virus rewriting my identity, a relentless storm beneath my skin. Some nights, I woke up drenched in sweat, my mind racing with memories that weren't mine. Sometimes I wondered if I was still Leonard Grey, or if I was something else entirely. Daniel had gone out to meet another contact, someone who promised access to secure communications within Prometheus. Elise and I were left alone in the cabin, poring over data, planning the next move. The files we'd collected were dangerous, enough to topple governments or destroy lives. We had to be careful. One wrong step could mean everything slipping through our fingers. I sat in the corner, staring at the flickering screen, feeling the serum pulse under my skin like a heartbeat of its own. It was more than a gift or a curse, it was a tether. A connection to the people who'd suffered under Prometheus's cold hand. I could hear their whispers sometimes, buried beneath my thoughts. Echoes of pain, despair, and unrelenting rage. I shook my head, trying to push it away. I needed to focus. Elise looked at me, eyes sharp but tired. "You're not just a survivor, Leonard. You're their voice now. But that means you're a target." I knew she was right. The message on my phone hadn't been idle threat, it was a promise. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life. Daniel's voice, urgent and strained. "They're on to us. Security forces are closing in on the cabin." Panic surged through me, but the serum lent me clarity and speed. I grabbed the bag, the drives packed tight inside, and followed Elise toward the back door. We slipped into the woods, moving fast, the cold biting at our faces. The chase was on. Branches whipped past me, but I was faster, stronger than I'd ever been. Still, every step felt like a countdown, a warning that the serum inside me was a double-edged sword. It made me a weapon, but weapons break. We burst out of the forest onto a deserted road, and I saw headlights barreling toward us. The black SUVs were relentless. "Elise, Daniel. Split up." I shouted, my voice steady despite the chaos. We scattered into the darkness. I ran until my lungs burned, the serum surge helping me dodge through alleys and side streets. But then it happened, a sharp pain stabbed through my chest, and my vision blurred. The serum was rebelling. The more I pushed it, the more it fought back. I stumbled into an abandoned building, heart pounding, sweat slicking my skin. I slid down the wall, gasping for air. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Calm, measured. Closing in. A figure stepped into the dim light, a man in a dark coat, his face hidden by shadows. "Leonard Grey," he said, voice low and dangerous. "You're more trouble than we expected." I forced myself to stand, fists clenched. "Who are you?" He smiled, a cruel twist. "Let's just say I'm someone who's been watching. Someone who knows what Prometheus really wants." I wanted to ask more, but before I could speak, he vanished into the night. The encounter left me shaken, but it confirmed what I feared most: Prometheus wasn't just a company. It was a network, an empire built on secrets, lies, and blood. That night, back in the safety of a new hideout, Daniel and Elise regrouped. Daniel's face was grim. "We found something," he said, sliding a tablet across the table. "A meeting. High-level execs. Tomorrow night. They're discussing Project Helios, the next phase." Helios, the sun god who brought light but also destruction. I felt a chill. Prometheus was planning something catastrophic. Something that could change the world. The files showed test subjects with abilities like mine, faster healing, enhanced cognition, but also signs of instability. They were preparing to unleash these experiments on a global scale. I thought about Marianne, trapped inside the facility, possibly part of this next phase. The woman who once promised me a life and now embodied the nightmare they'd created. "We have to stop it," I said, voice firm. "Before more people get hurt." Elise nodded. "But it won't be easy. They've infiltrated governments, law enforcement, even the media." The room felt colder, heavier with the weight of what lay ahead. Days blurred into nights as we planned. I trained harder, pushing my serum-enhanced body to its limits, trying to keep the growing darkness in my mind at bay. But the whispers were getting louder. The other voices inside me weren't just memories anymore, they were becoming something else. A force. One night, as I lay restless, I touched the scar on my wrist where the injections had started this all. The skin was warm, almost pulsing. I closed my eyes and let the voices wash over me. They told stories of pain and resilience, of broken lives and silent screams. I realized then what I had to do. Not just fight Prometheus, but become the beacon for those who'd lost their voices. To turn my curse into a weapon for justice. The next day, we moved toward the city for the meeting, our chance to intercept the shadowy leaders of this twisted empire. As I looked out at the skyline, I knew the fight was far from over. But for the first time in months, I felt something close to hope. Because sometimes, the darkest shadows cast the brightest light. And I was ready to burn. The city pulsed with life beneath the twilight sky, unaware of the storm about to descend. Daniel, Elise, and I moved like ghosts, blending into the crowd as we approached the towering glass building that housed the Prometheus boardroom. The place gleamed cold and immaculate, an unbreakable fortress hiding the darkest secrets. This was it. Our chance to stop Project Helios before it went live. Inside, the air was thick with power and deceit. Security was tighter than anything I'd faced: facial recognition scanners, armed guards, biometric locks. But Daniel's hacks carved a path through the digital defenses like a scalpel slicing through flesh. We reached the boardroom door just as the meeting was starting. Through the glass, I saw them, the faces behind Prometheus. Executives with smug expressions, government officials with hollow eyes, and a handful of scientists whose sterile white coats couldn't hide their greed. At the center sat Marianne. Her gaze met mine for a brief moment, calm, resigned, a flicker of something I couldn't read. Betrayal? Regret? Or determination? I clenched my fists. She was part of this, but why? Was she a prisoner or a willing participant? Daniel set up a small device on the floor, an EMP jammer to disable the communications temporarily. We had minutes. I moved closer to the glass, listening to the discussion. Phase 1 was successful, the lead scientist said. Subject 47 exhibits enhanced neural functions but with unexpected instability. They were talking about me. The director smiled coldly. We expected some loss. But the results justify proceeding with Helios. Helios, their plan to unleash genetically enhanced operatives into society. To control economies, governments, even the military. I felt bile rise in my throat. Suddenly, the door hissed open. The meeting paused, eyes narrowing toward the entrance. Daniel's voice was tense in my earpiece. They're on to us. Get ready. The glass behind me shattered, guards flooded in, guns drawn. I didn't hesitate. The serum surged through me, reflexes heightened, pain dulled. I moved like lightning, dodging bullets, incapacitating enemies with precise strikes I never thought possible. Elise and Daniel fought beside me, their determination fierce. Marianne stood frozen, caught between fear and resolve. I grabbed her arm. Why, Marianne? Why this? Her eyes finally softened. Because if we don't control it, someone worse will. Her confession didn't ease the rage, but it cracked the armor of my hatred. I saw the torment in her face, the cost of their twisted vision. We fought our way out, dragging her with us. Alarms blared, the facility descending into chaos. Outside, the night air hit me like a storm. I looked at Marianne, no longer just the woman who betrayed me, but a woman trapped in her own hell. The fight wasn't over. It had only begun. The cold night air did little to cool the fire raging inside me as we fled the Prometheus facility. Marianne limped between Daniel and me, her face pale and strained. For the first time, the distance between betrayal and truth felt like a razor's edge, thin and dangerous. We found shelter in an abandoned subway station deep beneath the city, a place long forgotten by the world above. The echoes of dripping water and distant trains filled the cavernous space. Here, away from the surface, the noise of the serum inside me quieted, replaced by a gnawing hunger for answers. Marianne sat heavily on a cracked bench. You don't understand what this project is, she whispered, voice trembling. It's not just science. It's survival. I looked at her, the woman who once promised me forever and now held secrets darker than I'd imagined. Survival? I spat. You turned me into a weapon. You left me to rot. She shook her head slowly. I was trying to protect you, from them. From who? I demanded, the fury in my chest burning hotter. The true masterminds, Marianne said, voice barely audible. Prometheus is just the surface. There's a deeper layer, people who want to control humanity itself. Daniel and Elise exchanged grim looks. We had stumbled into a conspiracy far larger than we thought. Helios, Marianne continued, is just the beginning. They plan to unleash an army of enhanced beings, soldiers who obey without question. The serum inside me pulsed sharply, as if in protest. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. And you? Where do you fit into this nightmare? Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. I wanted out. But they have my family. The weight of her confession pressed down on me. The lines between victim and villain blurred beyond recognition. Suddenly, a distant rumble shook the tunnels. Daniel's phone buzzed, encrypted messages flooding in. They're moving faster than we thought, he said grimly. Helios activation is imminent. We had little time. I paced the platform, my mind a whirlwind. The serum's voices whispered in the back of my head, warnings, memories, pain. Sometimes they spoke as one, sometimes as many. They were the fractured souls of those lost to Prometheus's experiments. I realized then what I had to do. Not just fight. Lead. Become the beacon for those broken by this monstrous project. Elise pulled me aside. We need proof. Something that can't be ignored. I nodded. Marianne has the research lab's access codes. We use them to get inside and expose everything. Her eyes narrowed. It's a suicide mission. But I was already made of things worse than death. That night, under the cloak of darkness, we infiltrated the heart of Prometheus, a hidden complex beneath the city's medical district. Marianne's codes opened doors, but every step deeper revealed more horrors. Labs filled with cages, containment units where elders and other test subjects lay dormant, half human, half machine. Their eyes flickered open as I passed, a silent plea echoing through the cold halls. I touched a glass panel, feeling the serums echo in their souls. I wasn't alone. We reached the central server room. Daniel and Elise began downloading files while I kept watch, the weight of every life inside this building pressing down on me. Minutes felt like hours until the alarms screamed again. Security forces flooded in. This time, I didn't run. I stood my ground. The serum lent me strength beyond human limits, but the fight wasn't just physical. It was a war for the soul, mine and theirs. Shots rang out. I moved like a shadow, striking with precision, but the numbers were overwhelming. Then, through the chaos, Marianne appeared, helping us escape, proving she wasn't just a traitor but a fighter. As we burst into the night air, the files secured, I looked back at the complex, its lights flickering like dying stars. This battle was far from over. But now, I wasn't just Leonard Grey. I was a force they couldn't ignore. And I would bring their empire crashing down, one shattered secret at a time. The first rays of dawn pierced the grime-coated windows of our safe house, cutting through the haze of exhaustion that clung to me like a second skin. I sat hunched over a battered table, the stolen data drives humming quietly beside my hand, each one a ticking bomb loaded with the secrets that could bring Prometheus to its knees, or bury me under the rubble of my own past. Daniel and Elise were busy setting up secure lines to leak the files, but my mind was somewhere else. Marianne's confession had rattled every foundation I thought I'd built my life upon. She wasn't just a traitor or a victim, she was a prisoner to forces I barely understood, shackled by threats I'd never imagined. I stared at my hands, trembling slightly. The serum coursing through my veins had turned me into something else, something stronger but more fragile. I was sharper, faster, but the voices inside me were growing louder. Flickers of other minds, fractured memories of those who never escaped Prometheus's grasp. Sometimes I could feel them clawing beneath my skin, a hive mind of pain and desperation. Leonard? Elisa's voice broke through my spiral. You okay? I forced a nod. I have to keep going. For them. For all of us. Daniel looked up from his laptop. We're broadcasting. The files are leaking to every major outlet, every government watchdog. The world is waking up. But waking up was only the first step. The backlash would be brutal. Hours later, the news exploded. Headlines screamed about Prometheus's illegal experiments, government collusion, and the shadowy Project Helios. Social media erupted with outrage and fear. But beneath the surface, the real war was just beginning. Prometheus fought back fast and hard. We lost contact with Elise in the middle of the night. Daniel's phone lit up with encrypted threats. The serum inside me throbbed, warning me the danger was closing in. I had to find Marianne. She was the key to unraveling the full scope of this nightmare. But she was missing. I followed a trail of encrypted messages to a derelict hospital on the city's edge. The building was a ghost, hallways empty, walls scarred by time and neglect. But somewhere inside, secrets waited. I moved cautiously, every shadow a potential threat. The serum heightened my senses, I could hear whispers, footsteps, even the faintest breathing. But they weren't human breaths. There was something else here. Something watching. Then I saw her. Marianne, pale and weakened, chained to a hospital bed in a room filled with flickering monitors. The faint glow revealed scars, physical and mental, that mirrored my own. "Leonard," she whispered, eyes glassy but alive. I rushed to her side, breaking the chains with a pocket knife. "Why?" I demanded, voice raw. "Why did you let this happen?" Tears streamed down her face. "They threatened Claire. If I refused, they'd take her. They used me to protect my daughter." The twisted calculus of love and sacrifice. I helped her up, supporting her weight as we moved toward the exit. But the serum warned me, danger was close. As we reached the stairwell, the floor trembled beneath us. Explosions rocked the building, the facility was under attack. Outside, masked figures awaited, mercenaries with orders to retrieve Marianne at all costs. I drew my pistol, heart pounding. The serum sharpened my reflexes. I moved faster than the eye could follow, neutralizing threats with ruthless precision. Marianne collapsed against me, exhausted and terrified. "We have to disappear," I said, voice low but fierce. "They want to bury this, bury us." We vanished into the labyrinth of abandoned streets, the city's underbelly swallowing us whole. Days bled into nights as we stayed off the grid, piecing together what Marianne knew. Project Helios was a global initiative, biotech companies, military factions, and shadow governments colluding to create a new world order. And I was their prototype, the spark that could ignite their downfall. But with every step closer to truth, the voices inside me grew louder, more insistent. Sometimes they were memories, sometimes warnings. I realized the serum wasn't just altering my biology, it was linking me to every subject they'd experimented on, a living network of pain and resistance. I was no longer just Leonard Grey. I was a vessel for their suffering, and their hope. One night, as Marianne and I sat in silence, I asked the question I'd been avoiding. "What happens if I lose control?" She looked at me, eyes steady despite her frailty. "Then you become what they made you. But you're stronger than that. You're human." I wanted to believe her. But the line was thinner than ever. The final battle wasn't just against Prometheus, it was against the darkness within myself. And the clock was ticking. The city's skyline burned gold beneath the setting sun, but beneath that glow lay a darkness that stretched deeper than any shadow cast by the towering buildings. Marianne and I sat in the cramped room of a safe house, a fragile sanctuary where every second felt borrowed. The files we'd leaked had shaken the world, but the real fight was just beginning. I stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror, a man reshaped by science and betrayal. The serum coursing through my veins had gifted me strength beyond normal human limits, but with it came a curse, voices. Flickers of memories that weren't mine, pieces of shattered lives tangled inside my mind. They whispered warnings, fears, rage. Sometimes I couldn't tell if the pain I felt was mine or theirs. Marianne broke the silence. "There's one place left," she said quietly. "The original lab where it all started. If we want to end this, we need to go there." I nodded, a knot tightening in my stomach. That place was a fortress, the heart of Prometheus's twisted empire. But it was also the source of my nightmares, the place where my body and mind were fractured and rebuilt. Daniel and Elise had managed to contact us briefly before disappearing again, their voices heavy with urgency and fear. They'd uncovered intel suggesting a final project, one more dangerous than Helios, a secret so catastrophic it could change the world forever. We couldn't run anymore. We had to confront it. The journey to the lab was perilous. We moved through abandoned streets and forgotten tunnels, always watching, always listening. The serum made my senses razor sharp. I heard whispers in the wind, the faintest echoes of footsteps behind us. They were hunting us. At night, the voices grew louder, sometimes pleading, sometimes warning. I was connected to every soul Prometheus had experimented on. Their pain became mine. Their rage fueled my every move. Inside the hidden facility, sterile white walls and cold machines awaited. The lab was a cathedral of science twisted by ambition and cruelty. I felt a sick familiarity, a sharp sting of memory flooding back. We found the central chamber, rows of tanks filled with inert bodies, test subjects suspended between life and death. Some showed signs of neural activity, faint glows pulsing in the dark liquid. Among them, I saw faces, some familiar, others strangers, all victims. Marianne's voice broke through my haze. This is their God complex. Playing with life, deciding who survives. Suddenly, alarms shattered the silence. The facility locked down. Security forces swarmed the corridors. We fought back with everything we had. The serum granted me reflexes faster than bullets, strength that shattered bones, but the fight was as much mental as physical. The voices inside battled to take control, threatening to overwhelm me. In the chaos, Marianne was captured. I was torn between rage and desperation. I had to save her, had to end this nightmare. Using every ounce of strength, I broke through the lines, reaching the control room where the project's mastermind awaited, a man whose face was as cold and unreadable as the machines around him. "You think you can stop progress," he sneered. "We're beyond ethics now. Beyond humanity." "I'm what you created," I said, voice steady despite the storm inside. "And I'm here to end it." A brutal confrontation followed, a battle not just of fists, but wills. The serum's voices screamed inside me, threatening to consume everything. But I held on, fighting for my identity, for the souls connected to mine. In a final surge, I destroyed the mainframe controlling the experiments, tanks shattering, systems collapsing. The facility began to self-destruct. I grabbed Marianne, and we fled through the crumbling corridors, the echoes of explosions behind us. Outside, as the lab was engulfed in flames, I looked at her, the woman who'd betrayed me, saved me, and suffered beside me. This war wasn't over. But we'd taken the first step toward redemption. And I, Leonard Grey, was ready to face whatever came next. The firelight flickered on Marianne's face as we stood watching the facility burn to ash. Smoke curled into the night sky like twisted fingers clawing for escape. Around us, the world felt fragile, like one wrong move could shatter everything we'd fought for. But the truth was heavier than the smoke. I turned to Marianne, searching her eyes for answers, for the woman I once knew beneath the layers of deception. "Why did you stay?" I asked quietly. "Why didn't you leave this all behind?" She looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I had to fix it. Because Claire, she's still out there, caught in their web. And because some mistakes can't be erased." Her words hit me harder than any punch. The woman I hated and feared was also a mother fighting her own battles, trapped in a nightmare she helped create. We knew time was running out. Project Helios was still out there, loose, spreading. And the voices inside me, the fractured souls of Prometheus's victims, grew louder every day, a chorus demanding justice. Daniel and Elise had vanished, swallowed by the shadows of a war that was far from over. We were alone now, but the burden was too great to carry silently. That night, I lay awake, the serum pulsing beneath my skin like a second heartbeat. The whispers invaded my dreams, snippets of memories, flashes of faces I'd never met but knew intimately. Each one a ghost tethered to me by science and pain. I realized the fight wasn't just against Prometheus, it was against the darkness within myself. The serum connected me to every victim, every lost soul. Their suffering was mine, their rage my fuel. Morning brought a grim resolve. We needed to find Claire. If Marianne's daughter was caught in the system, she was the last key to unraveling the conspiracy and breaking the cycle of pain. Our search led us through the city's underbelly, hidden clinics, secret labs, whispers of a program designed to enhance young minds. A new generation being molded into something unrecognizable. And then, a breakthrough. A contact reached out, someone inside the system, willing to help. A woman named Lena, a former scientist who'd turned whistleblower. She spoke of a facility where Claire was held, part of a program even darker than Helios. We had no choice. We had to go back into the heart of the beast. The rescue mission was a descent into hell. The facility was a maze of cold corridors and shadowed rooms, filled with the eerie hum of machines working on human lives. We found Claire in a containment chamber, eyes wide with fear but burning with defiance. The serum's effects were already visible, her mind expanding beyond normal limits, but at a terrible cost. She looked at me, recognition flashing in her eyes. "Dad?" It was a moment of fragile hope. But escape was only the beginning. As alarms blared and guards closed in, the serum surged within me. The voices screamed, warnings, memories, fury. I fought not just for Claire's life, but for all of us trapped in this nightmare. We broke free into the night, but the world was shifting beneath our feet. Prometheus's reach was deeper, its power darker than we'd imagined. And I was no longer just Leonard Grey, the man who'd been betrayed, experimented on, and broken. I was a beacon for the lost. A weapon forged from pain. And the reckoning was just beginning. Claire's eyes held a fire I hadn't seen since before this nightmare began, a mix of fear, fury, and something dangerously close to hope. She wasn't just a victim of Prometheus's twisted vision, she was becoming a fighter. Like me. Like all of us who have been broken and rebuilt. We moved through the night, shadows slipping through alleyways and forgotten tunnels, the city a maze of dangers and secrets. The serum inside me thrummed with a restless energy, sharpening my senses but whispering warnings I couldn't ignore. Every heartbeat carried the echoes of those lost to Prometheus, whispers of pain, of rage, of unfinished fights. Marianne stayed close, fragile but determined. The mother and daughter's bond was a thin thread, strained by betrayal and fear, but unbroken. We needed allies. We couldn't take down an empire alone. Elise had contacts, underground networks of hackers, activists, and former scientists who had turned against the biotech shadow world. We made contact with a group known only as the Reclaimers, who promised resources and manpower. But trust was a luxury we couldn't afford. Our plan was risky: strike at the heart of Prometheus's new operation, a sprawling complex where they were training the next wave of enhanced operatives. If we succeeded, we could cripple their power. If we failed, everything would be lost. As we prepared, I felt the serum pulsing stronger, my mind a battleground where the fractured voices clashed with my own will. Some nights, I feared losing myself completely, becoming the very thing I hated. But the fight demanded sacrifice. On the day of the assault, tension crackled in the air like static. We infiltrated the facility under cover of darkness, moving with purpose and precision. The corridors were sterile, but the shadows held horrors, test subjects like Claire, young faces twisted by science, minds expanding too fast, bodies pushed too far. I saw a reflection in a window, my face, older, harder, but marked by something more profound: determination. The man I was fighting to protect, not just for myself, but for everyone Prometheus had scarred. The alarm sounded. Chaos erupted. Gunfire echoed through the halls. I moved with a speed and precision that was almost inhuman, fueled by the serum and the voices that screamed inside me. Marianne and Claire fought beside me, mother and daughter united by blood and broken promises. We reached the central chamber, the core of the operation. There, I confronted the architect of this nightmare, the man who had orchestrated my transformation, who had turned science into a weapon. His cold smile sent a shiver down my spine. "You think you can stop evolution?" he sneered. "We are the future." I raised my fists, the serum flaring through my veins. "You made a monster," I said. "But I'm still human. And humans fight back." The battle was brutal. Every punch, every move was a test of will. The voices inside me screamed, but I held them at bay. When it was over, the complex was in ruins. The data destroyed. The prisoners freed. But victory was bittersweet. Prometheus was not a single enemy, it was a disease, infecting everything from governments to corporations to the very minds of people. And I was the carrier. As dawn broke, I looked at Claire and Marianne, my fractured family, bound by pain and hope. The war wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The city woke slowly, the first light spilling through cracked windows and broken blinds of our temporary refuge. Outside, the streets hummed with the distant sounds of sirens and whispered rumors. Prometheus's empire had been rocked, our assault on their complex had made headlines, exposing the nightmare beneath their sterile facade. But beneath the surface, the war was far from over. I sat across from Claire and Marianne, their faces etched with exhaustion but alive with a fragile hope. We'd won a battle, but the scars ran deeper than anyone outside our circle could understand. Claire, once a scared girl trapped in a cage of science, was becoming a force of her own. The serum's effects were still unpredictable, her mind raced faster than most, her emotions volatile, but her will was iron. Watching her reminded me painfully of how far this nightmare had spread, and how deeply it had touched my family. Marianne's frailty was more than physical. The weight of her choices, the price of her secrets, hung between us like a shadow. Yet, there was a steel beneath her fear, a determination born from love and regret. I felt the serum pulsing within me, constant, relentless. Sometimes I could hear the fractured voices clearly, like a choir of lost souls demanding justice. Other times, they whispered warnings, memories of experiments gone wrong, of lives shattered beyond repair. We had to move fast. Prometheus's remnants were regrouping, striking back through shadowy operatives embedded in governments, corporations, and even law enforcement. Our leak had ignited a wildfire of corruption and fear, but the deeper we dug, the more dangerous the ground became. Elisa's message came through, static-filled but urgent. They're mobilizing a new initiative. Codename, Phoenix. It's bigger than Helios, more ruthless. We don't have much time. Phoenix. The name itself was a promise of rebirth and destruction. We prepared to strike again, but the cracks in our alliance were starting to show. Marianne's guilt weighed heavily on Claire, and I could see the battle raging inside both of them, between love and hatred, loyalty and betrayal. One night, the serum's voices overwhelmed me. I was haunted by visions of a lab filled with screaming test subjects, shadows twisting into faces I knew, victims, friends, strangers, all bound to me by a terrible bond. I woke choking, the serum's pulse like a drumbeat in my veins. Daniel was gone. Elise too. Our network was crumbling under the weight of enemies and betrayals. But I wasn't finished. I vowed then, no matter the cost, no matter how fractured I felt inside, I would tear down the darkness piece by piece. Because the fight wasn't just for me, or for Marianne and Claire. It was for every lost soul Prometheus had silenced. We gathered what remained of our allies and mapped our next move, a high-risk infiltration of a government facility rumored to house the core data on Project Phoenix. This was the heart of the beast, the source of its resurrection. The plan was desperate, almost impossible. But desperation was all we had left. As we slipped into the cold corridors of the facility, I felt the serum surge, both a gift and a curse. The voices inside me guided, warned, sometimes screamed. I fought to hold on to my identity, to keep the line between man and monster razor thin. We found the data vault, a fortress of encryption and armed guards. The battle was fierce and brutal, guns firing, bodies falling, lives hanging in the balance. The serum made me faster, stronger, but every strike came with a cost. We secured the data, exposing the depth of Project Phoenix, plans to unleash not just enhanced operatives, but bioengineered contagions designed to control populations worldwide. The implications were terrifying. This was no longer just about power. It was about control on a scale humanity had never seen. As we escaped into the freezing dawn, I looked at Claire and Marianne, my family, my fractured anchor in a storm of chaos. The world was broken. But so was I. And maybe, just maybe, in that brokenness lay the key to rebuilding what we'd lost. The war was far from over. But I was ready to fight. The city was silent, but beneath that calm, the storm was gathering. After our narrow escape with the Project Phoenix data, every step felt heavier, like the walls were closing in. The weight of the serum inside me pulsed like a countdown, a reminder that time was slipping away. We had what we needed to expose Prometheus's darkest plan. But secrets have a way of poisoning even the closest bonds. That night, as I stared into the flickering shadows of our safe house, something gnawed at me, a doubt I couldn't shake. Marianne was restless. Her eyes darted nervously, fingers trembling as she shuffled through the files. Claire sat silently beside her, but even she seemed distant, a storm brewing beneath her calm. I wanted to believe they were with me, that our fractured family could hold together through the nightmare. But the serum whispered warnings, echoes of betrayals buried deep. Then I found it. A hidden transmission buried deep in the data Marianne had accessed, a signal coded with a message meant only for her. I played it. Her voice crackled through the static, calm but cold. Target secured. Extraction at 0300. Proceed as planned. The words hit me like a bullet. Target secured. Extraction. A plan. I confronted Marianne. Her eyes met mine, not with fear, but something darker. I had no choice, she said, voice steady. You think I wanted this? Claire's life depends on it. What are you hiding? I demanded. She hesitated, then dropped the truth like a bomb. I'm still working for them. The room seemed to tilt. Betrayal wasn't a sharp knife anymore, it was a slow poison seeping into every corner of my world. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was firm. Mom's been protecting us, from inside. But at what cost? I whispered. How many lies? The serum throbbed inside me, the fractured voices screaming in rage and confusion. Suddenly, the safe house was breached. Armed operatives flooded the room. The fight was brutal and chaotic. I fought with everything I had, the serum making me faster and stronger, but the emotional wounds cut deeper than any bullet. In the chaos, Marianne vanished, taken by those who still controlled her. Claire and I barely escaped, hearts heavy with shattered trust. As we vanished into the shadows, one thing was clear, the enemy wasn't just outside. It was inside. And the war for humanity's soul was more complicated, and darker, than I ever imagined. Claire's hand trembled in mine as we slipped through the rain-soaked alleys, the city's neon lights casting fractured reflections on puddles beneath our feet. The truth about Marianne's betrayal wasn't just a knife in my back, it was an earthquake shaking the fragile foundation we'd built. I wanted to scream, to rage, but there was no room for that. Survival demanded clarity. We can't trust anyone, I said quietly. Not Marianne, not anyone who's tied to Prometheus. Claire nodded, eyes fierce despite the tears that threatened to fall. But we have to keep fighting. For those who can't. The serum inside me throbbed, voices rising in a maddening chorus. Some were memories, some warnings, others, something darker. I clenched my jaw, forcing control. We moved fast, a ghost in the city's underbelly. Elisa's network was our last hope. If anyone could help us track Marianne and expose the layers of deception, it was her. Inside a cramped safe house, Elisa's eyes flickered as she scanned incoming data. They're planning something big, she whispered. A launch tied to Project Phoenix. Within days. We need proof, I said. Something undeniable. Elise nodded grimly. There's a facility, code-named Eden. They're hiding something there. Something that could change everything. We planned the raid quickly. Time was a luxury we no longer had. The night of the assault was electric. Darkness wrapped around us like a shroud as we breached Eden's perimeter, security tighter than ever. But the serum lent me strength and speed beyond human limits. I was a force fueled by rage and desperate hope. Inside, the facility was a tomb of whispered horrors. Rows of containment pods housed test subjects, young and old, some awake, eyes glazed with confusion, others still lost to Prometheus's twisted science. Then we found it. A central lab where a new serum variant was being developed, one designed not just to enhance, but to control minds, erase free will. Claire gasped. They're planning to enslave us all. The alarms screamed. We fought our way out, but not before I saw Marianne, her face conflicted but resolute, as she handed off a data chip to a shadowy figure. The twist hit like a punch to the gut. Marianne was playing a deeper game, one none of us fully understood. As we escaped into the stormy night, I realized this war wasn't just about stopping Prometheus, it was about untangling a web of lies and choosing who to trust when every ally could be an enemy. The serum pulsed wildly now, a reminder that my own body was becoming a battlefield. But I had one promise: I would find the truth. No matter the cost. The rain hammered against the cracked windowpane of our hideout, a relentless drumbeat echoing the chaos in my mind. Marianne's betrayal wasn't just a fracture in trust, it was a rift that threatened to swallow everything I fought for. Yet beneath the anger and confusion, a part of me couldn't let go of the woman she once was, the mother, the wife, the person I thought I knew. Claire sat across from me, her eyes burning with determination despite the storm inside her. The serum had changed us both, binding us to a destiny we never chose, but also to each other. Elise says Eden was only the beginning, Claire said softly. They're moving faster than we thought. And Marianne, she's caught in something bigger. Something we don't understand yet. I nodded, feeling the serum pulse beneath my skin, sharp, relentless. The voices inside me whispered warnings and memories that weren't mine, fragments of others who'd been broken by Prometheus's hands. We had to find Marianne. Not just to confront her, but to understand. Because the web of lies stretched too far, and the truth was buried beneath layers of deception. Our search led us through the city's underbelly, dark alleys, abandoned warehouses, places where the light never reached. Every step was a gamble, every shadow a threat. Then, a lead. An encrypted message traced back to a location, a forgotten research facility on the outskirts of the city. Rumors said it was a black site, a place where Prometheus tested its most secret projects. We moved under the cover of darkness, slipping past rusted gates and crumbling walls. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of chemicals and decay. Flickering lights revealed rows of containment chambers, echoes of suffering trapped in glass and steel. And then we found her. Marianne stood in the center of the lab, surrounded by monitors displaying genetic sequences and project schematics. Her face was pale but resolute, eyes reflecting a battle within. "Leonard," she said, voice calm but edged with desperation. "You don't understand what they've done." "What haven't you told me?" I demanded. She hesitated, then revealed the truth, a revelation that shattered everything. Prometheus wasn't just a biotech firm. It was a front for a global conspiracy involving powerful factions aiming to reshape humanity itself. Marianne had been working within the system, trying to sabotage it from the inside, but her actions had put her family in grave danger. Claire's face twisted with disbelief and pain. "You lied to protect us." "I did what I had to," Marianne said. "But they're coming for all of us. And the serum, they've perfected it. The new variant can control minds, erase free will. It's worse than anything we imagined." Suddenly, the facility's alarms blared, an ambush. Armed operatives stormed the lab, guns blazing. I felt the serum surge, the voices inside me screaming warnings and rage. We fought back fiercely, Marianne, Claire, and I united against a common enemy. In the chaos, Marianne handed me a small device. "This contains the master codes for Project Phoenix. Get it to Elise." As we escaped through smoke and fire, I realized the war was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming humanity itself. The truth was a double-edged sword, dangerous and liberating. And I was ready to face whatever came next. The rain had stopped, but the city was still soaked in the aftermath, streets slick with water and shadows thicker than ever. Marianne's words echoed in my mind: a global conspiracy, mind control, perfected serum variants. The truth was a poison I couldn't spit out, twisting tighter with every breath. Claire moved beside me like a silent shadow, the weight of everything pressing down on us both. Marianne's betrayal had been a wound, but her confession was a scar, something that would never fully heal. We had the master codes Marianne entrusted to me, a digital key that could unravel Project Phoenix once and for all. But as I stared at the device in my hand, I felt the serum pulsing, stronger, more volatile than ever. It wasn't just enhancing me. It was changing me, breaking me. I had to be careful. Losing control wasn't an option. Our destination was clear: Elise. She was the only one who could decrypt the codes and expose the conspiracy. But reaching her meant walking straight into the lion's den. The safe houses were compromised. Prometheus's reach was deeper than we'd feared. We took an abandoned subway car, riding beneath the city's veins, a ghost train on a forgotten track. The serum sharpened my senses. I could hear the faintest whisper of footsteps, the rhythm of distant engines. It was as if the city itself was alive, watching, waiting. When we reached the rendezvous point, Elise was waiting, eyes sharp and wary. The moment I handed over the device, her fingers flew over the keypad. This is everything," she breathed. "If we broadcast this, the world will know. But it'll make us targets." I nodded. "We don't have a choice." Then, the ground trembled. An explosion ripped through the nearby streets. Chaos erupted, gunfire, screams, and the unmistakable sound of helicopters closing in. The serum inside me flared. The voices screamed, a chorus of warning and fury. We had been found. We fled through underground tunnels, pursued by Prometheus operatives bent on destruction. Somewhere in the dark, Claire grabbed my arm. "Leonard, you're changing. I can feel it." I forced a smile. "I'm still me." But the truth was a jagged lie. The serum's grip was tightening. My thoughts weren't always my own. Sometimes I glimpsed through the eyes of others, victims, enemies, strangers, each a thread pulling at my mind. I was becoming a nexus, a living network of pain and power. At the edge of the city, we found temporary refuge with the Reclaimers, the underground resistance. Their leader, a fierce woman named Nadia, promised help, but warned the fight ahead would demand everything. That night, as rain began again, I stared at the sky, the serum throbbing like a heartbeat. I was Leonard Grey, once a man betrayed. Now, I was something else. And the breaking point was coming. The dawn broke cold and gray, casting long shadows across the ruined city. The final battle was no longer a distant threat, it was here, breathing down our necks with the weight of every lie, every betrayal. Claire stood beside me, fierce and unyielding, her eyes reflecting the storm inside. Marianne was gone, taken by the enemy, a ghost haunting the edges of my resolve. But her sacrifice had given us the key to bring down Prometheus once and for all. The Reclaimers gathered in the underground bunker, a ragtag army forged from desperation and hope. Nadia's voice was steady as she laid out the plan: infiltrate the heart of the Phoenix operation, broadcast the truth to the world, and ignite a revolution. The serum pulsed within me, a living fire threatening to consume, but also fueling the fight. I had become more than a man, a conduit for every broken soul Prometheus had created, a weapon forged in pain and science. We moved through the shadows, every step measured, every breath held. The compound was a fortress, but their walls would crumble beneath the weight of truth. Inside, I faced the architects of this nightmare, cold, calculating faces that had played God with human lives. They smiled, confident their empire was untouchable. But they hadn't counted on a man who had lost everything and found a new purpose in the ashes. The serum surged as I fought, not just for survival, but for justice. Every strike was a scream for those silenced, every breath a promise to those still trapped. At the command center, Claire and Nadia hacked the systems, broadcasting the damning evidence to the world: videos, documents, testimonies, undeniable proof of Prometheus's crimes. Outside, alarms wailed and chaos erupted. The world was watching. In the end, the compound fell, but the scars remained. The fight had changed us all. As the smoke cleared, I looked at Claire, my daughter, my fiercest ally. "We rebuild," I said, voice rough but resolute. She nodded, eyes bright with hope. The serum inside me pulsed once more, a reminder of the cost, but also the power to heal. We had reached the reckoning, and together, we would face whatever came next. Thank you for journeying through this story. Subscribe.